Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be going through every single Power League map within the rotation right now, giving you guys the best picks, the best bans, the best first picks, and the best last picks as well. So a lot to really dive into, because especially with season nearly ending, you know, we've got to be grinding towards that bling, trying to get the most we possibly can before the resets. So before we jump into it, make sure you're using the creator code. That'd be greatly appreciated. And without further ado, let's hop into it. Alright, guys, so jumping into the first game mode, we have Bounty, and starting off with a dry season. So with some of these, you'll see on the graphic, there's a couple that I'm missing an example draft from, but I think most of the time you don't really need an example draft, especially for a map like dry season. So for me, the best picks for dry season are always going to be throwers. So within this meta, I know you got to be a little bit careful of those aggro last picks, but it's pretty safe to just try and get the best thrower you can available as early as possible in the draft in pretty much every bounty scenario. So whether that's Tick, whether that's a Sprout or Grom, you know, more often than not, all three of those throwers are actually banned. So then you can go with alternatives as well. You've got the likes of Mr. P, can kind of act like a thrower. You've got Barley as well, who's actually used quite often on dry season. But as I mentioned, like, I would say aggro picks aren't really as picked often really on dry season. You may get the odd Carl or the odd Fang, but I'd say more often than not, there's just a lot of snipers and a lot of throwers. So a lot to choose from with a dry season. Let's hop into the next one. So moving on to the next map, we have Layer Cake. So Layer Cake is, I would say, definitely out of all the bounty maps, you've got to be a little bit more apprehensive in your draft, because last pick, especially to do with tanks, are just so incredibly strong. So kind of build your draft around that. Of course, don't just have 3 tank counters in there, but make sure you've at least got one brawler that can somewhat deal with that last pick aggro pick. So again, the best first picks are always going to be them throwers. Tick as a first pick right now is just absolutely dominating. Shelly is a really strong pick on this map, because you've got the clay pigeons, which down the lane specifically, it's just going to get some insane damage, and then you can get so much pressure with her super. You know, Penny's just really solid. You can place that turret in a lot of safe spots. Jean, of course, just really good at bounty, being able to scout the grass, and then of course your generic throwers. So again, be careful of those last picks, you know, like Carl, for example. You see a lot of Ash last pick, especially if you don't have the DPS in your composition. Like, for example, I see a few people run a lot of like Gray, Jean, and then maybe like another brawler that doesn't really do really quick burst damage. That's why Ash as a last pick can just be so solid into that. So Layer Cake, a lot of choices. Let's hop into the next one. Okay, so moving into the final map, we have it Shooting Star. So Shooting Star meta doesn't really change too much. It's a the introduction of Meg. Even with the recent nerfs, I've been seeing a lot more Meg when it comes down to Shooting Star, just because it's so easy to get a lot of pressure with her. You know, a gadget is still pretty okay, still 5k health, and still got some pretty decent range. So she's still a really strong pick. And then of course you got the generic Tick, Piper, and Nanny, so making sure you got those on lockdown. And then, you know, Jean's just pretty safe against everything. Although in Shooting Star it's really hard to get like a successful pull with Jean, I think it just offers really good support. You know, Max on her own can just cause a lot of pressure, and of course that super is really going to change the game. We've got a lot of other choices as well when it comes to the range department. You know, Gus is a brawler that I always pick on Shooting Star. Same with Bella as well, because if you got the taps, those brawlers are always going to be your carry type of brawlers. And then of course you got sneaky picks as well, you know, like Gray in the middle, especially with his, I think it's Walking Cane gadget. You can pull people through that unbreakable wall, and then once you get that first super, counters a lot of the sharpshooters on this map. So a lot of choices on Shooting Star, but stick to your generic range brawlers. Okay, so now moving on to Brawl, we have a Backyard Bowl. So as you see by the graphic, you can see the best first picks, last picks, and other picks in terms of what's good in Backyard Bowl. Then so Backyard Bowl is a little bit of a boring one. It's those unbreakable walls can be pretty toxic, and a lot of times the games will actually, you know, go for the full distance and literally go into overtime. There'll be a lot of draws here, so, you know, generically there's just a lot of sharpshooters, and to do with Backyard Bowl on the play style, it just really is whoever gets that kind of first kill engagement or gets the pressure, and then you can kind of start the spawn trap. But without, like, I don't know, like a brawler that can throw over, you know, that really back wall, or some kind of brawlers that break open the walls, it's going to be really hard, of course, for you to really score. So as you can see by the picks, then you've got a lot of brawlers that can make use of certain situations. By that I mean, you know, like Stu, for example, you know, is like a secret assassin. You know, Bonnie, once she gets her super, Crow, once he gets his super. There's always those type of brawlers that can quickly pounce upon a lane or something that can help establish your control. Those are going to be the best types of brawlers. You know, Gray, another great example of that, but still a lot of just generic good Backyard Bowl brawlers. You know, Jean, I see a lot of Jean, even though again, Jean isn't that like type of carry brawler. He's more of a support. Like the way you use Jean is that you can huddle up and then push the opponents back with that healing star power. So for me, a lot of options on Backyard Bowl, but it just really depends on who's tapping the best. Okay, so jumping into the next Brawl map, we have Field Goals. So this map is probably one of the hardest to draft in just because of those unbreakable walls down the lane. I think this map is incredibly toxic and incredibly caters the last pick. So you can see the best picks. You can also see the pro draft as well, and you can even see in the pro draft that they literally drafted 2 throwers because of how dominant throwers are on this map. So for me, make sure you've got a thrower on lockdown. That can be a lot of different throwers. For me, it's got to be between really Barley, Willow and Dynamite, just because they're a little bit better in the Brawl environment. Dynamite's actually insane on this map because you can get so many good goal scoring opportunities with his super. But for first pick, I think it's pretty safe to go like a Barley. Shelly down the lane is just good against everything with her speed, and she can be somewhat of like a soft counter to throwers because of that speed. She can dodge them really easily. You know, Meg down the middle is insane. Max as well. The reason why Max is so good here is because of that super. You can combine it with your lane brawler and overwhelm the throwers. So you always got to think about throwers on this map because they even counter the tanks. But then you can kind of, you know, for your 4th, 5th in that middle slot, start picking brawlers that are good against throwers. You know, that's why people go Primo, because once you get the super, you can easily get a kill on them. I've even seen Edgar in competitive on this map. So Field Goal is a little bit of a hard one to draft. Okay, so jumping into the last Brawl map, we have a Pinhole Punt. So as you can see by the graphic, these are the best picks and whatever else. So in terms of last pick, you probably see the same type of brawlers pretty much throughout every single game mode, but you've always got to, of course, even if you haven't got last pick, be wary of those last pick brawlers. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But anyways, first pick, Pinhole Punt. Of course, B is just like one of the best brawlers here. Shelly, again, when it comes down to gem grab or Brawl, she's pretty much the best first pick everywhere. That speed is just insane. And then Crow, being able to check the mid bush, being able to slow, and then being able to jump and get some good positioning. Crow's just an amazing pick. And then Ems, when it comes down to gem grab and Brawl, she's just such a solid mid. She can use her presence, you know, seeing as she has quite a lot of HP, to be honest, as a lane, and then combining that with her super and the speed gear on this map can be really dangerous. And Max, of course, pretty good everywhere. So in terms of Pinhole Punt, Ben, there's a lot of things to kind of be careful about. One thing as well that I've learned from this map is that you've got to make sure, again, that you've got some type of kind of aggro counter, you know, whether that's the Ems, whether that's like an Otis, whether that's like a Lou or a Nita. You need to make sure you've got something like that, because more often than not, people can actually pick like a Poco as well. Like, people are starting to forget about Poco, but trust me, you're still going to be aware of it on this map in particular. So that's going to be Pinhole Punt. Let's hop into the next game mode. Alright guys, so jumping into the next game mode, we have Gem Grab, and starting off with Crystal Arcade. So you can see by the best picks and also the example draft right here, these are the best options to go. So in Crystal Arcade in particular, well, in Gem Grab in particular, of course, you have 1 mid and the 2 lanes. So in terms of the best mids, then you've got quite a lot of options. You've got like Max, B, Gus, Jean, Meg, and even Janet in this brand new meta. I've seen a lot of people pick Janet as a mid. Now, me personally, I won't really go Janet too much, just because still it takes a long time to get your super, but pros have been going it quite often. I guess Janet can be a really good brawler to pinch down by lane. So whenever I'm playing Crystal Arcade, straight away I'm thinking about how I can help the opponent win the lane, because of course there's a lot of different great lanes, right? You've got Shelly, who of course with the speed gear is going to be a big pain, and then she can even use her super to break open their left hand or right hand lane, make it a lot easier to defeat certain brawlers. That's why Ruffs is such a strong brawler here. Ems is drafted so much on this map because, again, the speed, just being able to overwhelm the opponent quickly. You know, speed gear brawlers are so strong when it comes down to certain maps. A lot of good options as well. You know, Spike can be pretty good with the vision gear. You know, Tara's starting to make a little bit more of a presence within this, because again, last pick brawlers can be so strong in the fact that these tanks can just be so overwhelming. So Crystal Arcade, to be honest, a lot of different options to go, but for me it always comes down to whoever is like playing the best mid, because if you can pinch your lane, you're going to be winning the game. Okay, so now moving on to Gem 4 then. So these are going to be the best first 6 picks and also other picks. So also let me know if you want me to kind of change the Gem Grab graphic around in terms of best mids and then best lanes, but for now this will do. So in terms of best mids, then you've got the likes of Max, Meg, B, I've seen Gus, I've seen Jean, I've seen Poco, Pam. There's a lot of options when it comes down to the mid. Me personally, I like the Max, because again, you can combine with so many different kind of tanky or also options that are really overwhelming, like Tara and Ems, for example, and you're going to be able to make a lot of presence on this map. You've also got the likes of Crow, who I often first pick a lot because, again, Crow you can actually do as a hybrid brawler. You can have him down the lane or you can have him in the middle. Of course, he's going to counter the likes of Max, for example. He's going to be pretty decent against Meg, you know, that kind of gist. So in terms of 6th picks as well, I've seen Ruffs used a few times in competitive because what people do on a map like Gem 4 is they abuse unbreakable walls so much. So of course the brawler that can ricochet and then shoot around that unbreakable wall, but not only that, they can use the super to break at least one of the walls in the middle, so at least it's a lot easier to pinch them out. So yeah, for me, I've just had terrible experiences with people just camping in that middle. So making sure again that you've got those brawlers that aren't really too squishy and that can make themselves really useful in the middle. That's why I just love Ems on this map. So a lot of choices. Let's jump into the next one. And finally moving on to Hard Rock Mine Ben. So the Hard Rock Mine meta hasn't really changed too much. It's always the same old, same old. But I'd actually say Rico's, I won't say removed from the meta, but I would say that he's more so of like a middle pick. Only because Rico's just so easy to counter right now. Even tanky brawlers can often overwhelm a Rico. So you can see by the graphic anyway who's the best first and last pick. So for me, always Shelly's going to be an amazing option, first pick option when it comes down to gem grab. She can shut down not only tanks, but pretty much everyone. So that's why she's always so good. Kind of like Otis, but even better. Still, of course, going to be really good. You can switch gadgets with him. You can either go with the speed turret in the back, or you can use the unbreakable one, well, the breakable one, sorry, and then counter certain lanes like Rico. And then Penny's just solid overall. You can use it as a mid or use her as a lane. And her turret on a map like Hard Rock Mine is just so annoying because it's going to be really hard for the opponents to take it down in particular. Again, a lot of solid mids as well. You've either got Max, you've got the likes of B, Bell. I've seen Pam on this map, Gus, RT, a lot of solid options when it comes down to Hard Rock Mine. And again, this map in particular, tanks as a last pick are so hard to counter. You know, I've seen Ash countless amount of times. I've seen Sam a lot of times, Carl a lot of times. So making sure you've got at least one brawler to deal with those. Okay, so now jumping into the highest best picks now. Starting off with Hot Potatoes. So for Hot Potato, it's actually a really difficult map to draft on. I've had a lot of bad experiences on this map. Basically in the gameplay that you see on the screen, I think the opponent tanks went like 1-14 and 1-16. You would have seen it on my Twitter, but yeah, a lot of bad experiences. So for me, Hot Potato isn't about control, it's just about getting those high damage brawlers. So that's where you see the likes of Colette, Ems, Nita, Barley, for example. All of those tanky options as well are just really amazing picks, because more often than not on Hot Potato, I've had it as well where even myself, I've had a really low kill to death ratio, but one good attack with a brawler like Nita, for example, and I just end up winning the game. Like, I'll spawn trap for like 2 minutes 15, and then literally a high damage brawler is just able to win the game quickly. So that is why I always go for damage in a map like Hot Potato. But again, a lot of tanky brawlers that you can use. You've got, of course, the Nita that I mentioned. You've got Spike, which is pretty good hybrid option. Throwers, of course, good. You've got to pretty much have everything on this map. A pretty hard map to play, but a lot of solid options. So next up in the heist, we have Kaboom Canyon. So you can see the best picks and last picks on your screen right now. So nothing really changed in terms of the Kaboom Canyon meta. Even though Max got nerfed recently, I've still seen Max pretty much used all the time on Kaboom Canyon. She's really good against everything, counters the sharpshooters, and of course can really help you get back into the fight. You've got Crow, who can just easily scout the grass, and then Colette, of course, being able to safely dash over that lake, get a lot of damage, always been pretty solid. That's why I really like Bonnie as well, because she's got the ability to jump from so far and just get instant pressure. You can even jump into the left top corner as well. See that often with Bonnie, just to create that pressure. You always need to be careful of that. So again, you want to make sure as well that you at least got one brawler, I would say, that can make really good use of getting into that corner, whether that's like a Carl, for example, whether it's a Nanny with the TPs, whether that's, I don't know, like a Bonnie, or just any brawler that can, wiggle its way into that kind of pinch position. I find it really useful in a map like Kaboom Canyon. Of course, you've got the likes of Penny and Brock as well, who can just hold down that middle. I would say that brawlers like Nanny and Piper are actually a little bit overrated on a map like this. I don't know why. For me, I just overwhelm them quite easily. But as a last pick, if you're looking to counter some of the other sharpshooters, for example, like B, Byron, of course, Piper and Nanny can be really solid in the draft. So again, a lot of solid options when it comes down to Kaboom. And lastly, in heist, we have safe zones. These are the best first picks and last picks for safe zones. So just like most heist maps, even on a really long range map like this one, you've still got to be really careful of that Daryl and Cole and Buzz last pick in particular. So first picks, for me, I've seen a lot of Bell first pick. I don't know what it is with safe zone, but she's just a really solid option. You've of course got the traps in the middle, especially with unbreakable walls. They've only got two ways they can actually kind of get through the middle. Of course, that's by the left lane or through the middle. So traps, bell traps in particular, are just going to be really toxic on this map. Collette's going to be a fantastic option down that left hand side. Again, being able to super over the river just causes a lot of pressure. Eve is just really solid because of course you got the unbreakable walls down the right, so you can easily just put her in that little pocket and get a lot of value. Brock being able to shoot over lake, he can just get insane damage. And of course Bonnie is going to be that really good hybrid brawler. So in terms of other picks as well, you've got 8-bit who often can get countered, but you know, if to draft him up pretty late on, he's that brawler that can just deal so much damage quickly. So always with Heist, I'd say make sure you've got at least a couple of really high damage brawlers. You can't just be holding control 24/7 because control just doesn't win in Heist anymore. It used to a couple of years ago, but as time has gone on, people have learned just to go about high damage compositions. So again, like Lola, for example, get a lot of damage as well. Colt, I've seen sneaking back into this meta as well. A lot of great options when it comes down to safe zone. So now we're moving on to the next game mode, which is Hot Zone and the map Parallel Plays. So you can see by the picks on the screen then, Parallel Plays is a really hard one. For me, to be honest, I'm not too keen on drafting on this map. So I'd rather you just watch some pro gameplay if you really want to learn how to draft completely on this map. But I think I've got a good idea on the best brawlers anyway. So of course, Parallel Plays has always been the same in terms of strategy. Of course, you want that left hand side brawler who's pretty good against aggro. You want that mid brawler that can easily go down both sides of the map and help with any pinching. And then of course, down the right hand side, you want someone that's really aggressive. So I see a lot of aggro tanks there. I see a lot of Carl, I see a lot of Ash, Buzz. I've seen Sam, for example, just making sure that you at least got someone that can hold some good presence, because of course with that unbreakable wall, more often than not, you just need to get in behind once and you literally have to force a pinch every single time. And if you've got a high HP brawler like Ash, even in a 1v1 against your biggest counter, you can easily use those unbreakable walls. So it's a hard one, Parallel Plays. I see people often draft throws pretty early. In competitive, I don't see draft throws too often, but you know, like Barley, Willow, for example, can be pretty good down the defensive lane as long as you're not wasting your ammo. Of course, unbreakable walls is going to be pretty hard for tanks to kind of counter those throwers. So a lot of good options when it comes to Parallel Plays. It's a really hard one to coordinate with your teammates. Okay, so jumping into the next map, we have Ring of Fire. So you can see the best picks, and unfortunately, no example draft in this one. But I think a lot of people know how to play Ring of Fire already. It's been a map within the pro scene for a very long time. But anyways, in terms of the first picks then, I believe Meg is still probably the best first pick. I know I've said a few times that she's maybe a little bit overrated in some senses, but Ring of Fire has always been her bread and butter. She's always been insane on this map, mainly because, again, she has 5k HP, which when you even die in suicide into this zone, you're just going to respawn and get back your mech again and have 5,000 plus HP. It's just really hard to deal with. Of course, you can have the control brawlers or sniper brawlers, but you always just want at least one brawler that can sit in the zone a lot. So of course, high HP, it's going to be pretty hard for your opponents to take you down. Crow going to be fantastic on this map with the slows. Gus, I really like Gus personally because he can combine with that kind of aggro zone brawler, and of course with the super can really help you out. You know, Stu can be that zone brawler as well. Even though he hasn't the highest HP, he can dash around and be really annoying for the opponents to deal with. Same with Leon as well. Leon is a sneaky, really good first pick. People are still underrating him right now, but Ring of Fire has always been one of his best maps, so making sure you're getting used to that. And again, a lot of solid options when it comes down to Ring of Fire. Okay, so jumping into the final hot zone map, we have Split. So you can see by the draft right here, the Split meta basically hasn't changed with the balance changes. We've got the same old really strong brawlers. We have Gray, Stu, and Russ. Those are always going to be your three top brawlers to pick when it comes down to this map. Of course, you've got some other options as well with Shelly. And then again, last pick, I don't think it's too dominant on this map, but you still got to make sure you're not having a squishy composition, because I do see quite often as a last pick like a Sprout, a Squeak, or Mr. P who can really counter those squishy options. So when it comes down to Split as well, it depends on kind of how your team approach it, but of course you always want that one brawler that can normally shoot around walls. That's like Rico, Ruffs, or someone that can at least constantly kind of check that right hand zone. And then normally you have that kind of aggro pick, or I don't know, like semi aggro pick down by left hand side, or at least maybe a brawler that can have some type of unbreakable wall feature, because of course you're going to struggle to get that left hand zone. So you know, if you have like a Ruffs who can throw a super to break it open, or if you have a Stu with his gadget, it's going to be really good and really beneficial for your team to push up. You know, Penny's going to act like a fourth brawler on this map. You know, any thrower as well is going to be really strong as long as you're not facing off against any unbreakable wall brawlers, And then of course you got Griff as well, who I think is a really underrated pick on this map, being able to break open the map the way you want it to, and also just get a lot of zone percentage with his star power. I think it's incredibly underrated here, but that's going to be the final hot zone map. Okay, so jumping into the final game mode, we have Knockout, and the first map is going to be Flaring Phoenix. So you can see by the graphics, these are going to be your best picks and best last picks as well. So with Flaring Phoenix, a map I've not played too much in Power League. I've played a lot of Power League within the past week, but I was really struggling to actually play it again, like to get gameplay for it. But anyways, you can see the best options. So in terms of Knockout in general, I just think either Gene or any thrower is a really solid first pick. And then on this map in particular, I really love Gray down the lane because that gadget has some insane range, especially through the grass. It's pretty easy to connect onto someone if you just randomly throw that gadget into the grass. And then once you get your super, you can counter so many different meta brawlers on this map. So Gray, I just love him on this map. RT is a really strong brawler on this map because it's pretty easy just to hit your standard shots with RT on this map. And then of course you got your split form in case anyone wants to go any aggressive brawlers. So in terms of last pick, I don't think last pick is too heavy on this map in my opinion. You know, of course last pick's always pretty strong, but you only really got to watch out for the likes of Fang, for example, or maybe like a Nanny to counter out your other snipers. But again, a lot of good options. You got to be wary that a lot of people are going to be banning the best throwers in Grom, Tick and Sprout. So still picking Barley or Willow is a good alternative for me. So a lot of good options here. Okay, so next up we have a Goldarm Gulch. So you can see the best first and sixth picks here. So in terms of what you really want to go on Goldarm Gulch, again, it's down to your normal knockout throwers. So you have Grom, Tick and Sprout. Those are the three brawlers that you want to be picking pretty much early on every single time. And then of course, if you do end up picking, I don't know, for example, like the Sprout instead of a Tick, making sure that you've probably got some more tank heavy, I won't really say counters, you know, you don't have to go like Colette. Make sure at least you got someone that can deal with any aggression still, because of course Sprout is really suspect to those aggros. You know, Gus, in my opinion, maybe not in other people's opinion, I just always go and knock out. People don't ban Gus, but early on I can just insta lock him, and he's pretty much a safe bet when it comes down to knockout. You know, Gene as well, a really solid option as well, and RTSC quite often when it comes down to Goldarm Gulch. So again, not really too many, I would say, last pick heavy options here, just because of the way Goldarm Gulch works. A lot of times people just go down the left hand lane and then slowly kind of pinch and try and get a couple of kills across the kind of across the map. But yeah, I don't really see like aggro picks working out too much, because more often than not you've got a brawler that can really like cancel them out. So a lot of good options here. Okay, and lastly for knockout, we have out in the open. So you can see the best first picks and last picks here. So in terms of out in the open, again, I feel like it's a map that you can go pretty much a lot of different options, but again, it just really matters to who wins that 1v1. So in terms of first picks, I think Max, Gene and Bonnie are the best. Bonnie is really strong because more often than not you have a brawler that's kind of pushing down the right hand lane trying to pinch you out, but if you have a Bonnie in your team, you can easily just catapult onto that lane and get a free kill pretty much every single time. So normally I see like snipers go down that right hand lane, for example, you know, like Belle, you know, like B, for example, and then Bonnie can just kill those really easily. And then you've got Gus in the middle, of course, really strong and knockout. Eve's going to be really strong because you've got that water down the left hand side, and then even she can counter some of the other brawlers which are really strong on this map, like Nanny, Piper, you know, like Mandy, who can be sometimes pretty good as well. You can just use that gadget and jump away. Same with any aggro as well, which is a really solid option in that way. And then RT, I found really good success here because you can just tap a couple of times, and then of course if you combine with your other sharpshooters, you're going to be able to just destroy people really quickly. So a lot of good options on out in the open. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think of all my suggestions in the comment section below. I'm also doing a guide for a challenge which is coming out in a few days time tomorrow, so make sure you're looking out for that one. But that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.